Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves.
Great to be here.
Today we're looking at a specific headline that's really catching attention in the healthcare sector. And we're going to walk you through exactly how the market processes this kind of information.
Yeah, it's a tough one to read.
It really is. So here is the news item we're looking at. Amgen's rare disease drug, Tavneos, is facing safety concerns. And there are reports of around 20 deaths linked to serious liver dysfunction among patients who were treated with Tavneos in Japan.
Right, and that is the core of the medical and, the regulatory concern right now, because in response to those reports, Kissei, which is Amgen's partner operating over in Japan, they took immediate action.
What did they do?
They formally asked doctors to just completely stop prescribing the drug to new patients just due to these liver damage concerns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, when a partner goes beyond simply updating a warning label and, actively halts new prescriptions, it alters the revenue expectations and the risk profile for that asset almost immediately.
It totally changes the picture. So today we are going to look strictly at this headline and just identify the specific winners and losers in the market.
Just follow the money.
Exactly. We are just going to follow the capital and see where it goes. So what does this all mean?
Well,
Let's start by looking right at the company at the center of the headline before we explore the other market players.
yeah, I mean, the clearest loser in this scenario is Amgen. Their ticker is AMGN.
Right.
Amgen is directly exposed because, well, Tavneos is their drug. But the mechanism of how they acquired this drug is, it's what makes the market reaction so acute here.
Because they bought it, really.
Exactly. Tavneos came into Amgen portfolio through their acquisition of a company called Chemocentrics.
Okay, I want to look at this from a different angle to make the market psychology a bit more clear for you guys listening. Imagine you finally buy that high-performance sports car you've been eyeing for years.
Maybe I like this.
Right. You do the research, you pay a premium price tag, and you're thrilled because you expect a certain level of daily utility and, performance out of it.
Sure.
But then a few months later, you find out the brakes might be faulty.
That's a problem.
A massive problem. Suddenly, that original premium price tag you paid feels very different. You start viewing the entire purchase through a lens of regret, really, and risk.
Yeah.
So how does this safety issue affect the perceived value of that Chemocentrics deal for Amgen?
Well, that sports car analogy captures the investor sentiment perfectly, especially when you consider how pharmaceutical companies actually value these acquisitions.
And they do it.
When a large pharma company acquires a smaller biotech firm, the purchase price is entirely based on these really complex financial models.
Right. They're not just guessing.
No, not at all. These models project peak sales for the acquired drugs over like a 10 to 15-year horizon. They use a discounted cash flow analysis.
Okay.
And that relies entirely on a specific number of patients adopting the drug year after year.
So it's a very rigid math problem.
Exactly. And Amgen paid a premium for Chemocentrics specifically to access the future cash flows of Tavneos.
Right.
Now, if prescribing slows down drastically or, worse, if the drug faces withdrawal pressure from regulators, those long-term financial models just fall apart.
The math doesn't work anymore.
The projected cash flow drops, but the price Amgen already paid remains the same.
Ouch.
Yeah. So investors will immediately question the validity of the acquisition itself, the diligence process, and the future revenue expectations that were already priced into Amgen's stock.
I mean, if I am a portfolio manager and I am watching Amgen take a hit on an acquired asset, I am naturally going to look at my screen and just scrutinize every other company that recently bought their pipeline.
Exactly.
It becomes a question of overarching strategy.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Not just a single drug failure.
That is exactly how capital moves. And this leads us to the broader acquisition risk. When the market starts doubting the safety of acquired drugs, the selling pressure extends to other companies.
Companies that do the same thing.
Right. Companies that rely heavily on buying smaller firms to fill their development pipelines. So Bristol Myers Squibb, ticker BMY, and Gilead Sciences, ticker GILD, fall into this category.
Wait, just to clarify for everyone, they aren't directly involved with Tavneos.
Correct. Now,
Yeah.
to be clear, they are not directly tied to Tavneos. They do not have exposure to this specific liver dysfunction issue.
Okay.
However, both of these companies have used acquisitions extensively to drive their growth over the last decade.
I see.
So if traders start demanding a higher margin of safety or, if they apply a blanket discount to recently acquired assets across the board, companies like Bristol Myers Squibb and Gilead Sciences become collateral losers.
Because the strategy itself is under fire.
Exactly. The market simply becomes less willing to pay a premium for growth through acquisition.
Okay, so because Amgen operates heavily in the rare disease space, I have to ask how safety concerns for one specific drug alter investor confidence in the broader rare disease and biotech sectors.
It's a chain reaction.
Does the actual math behind the rare disease business model change when something like this happens?
It absolutely changes the calculation. Rare disease pharma companies operate on a very specific economic model. They target extremely small patient groups with high-value treatments.
How small are we talking?
Because the patient populations are so small, I mean, sometimes just a few thousand people globally, the price of the drug must be high to recoup the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on research and development.
Right.
We are often talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient per year.
Wow.
But that pricing power relies entirely on the drug being incredibly safe and highly effective.
So insurance covers it because they have to.
Exactly. Insurance companies and national healthcare systems will pay those high prices because there is no alternative and the drug works. But serious safety concerns change the market's view of that pricing power.
It makes it harder to justify the price tag.
And it also changes expectations for patient adoption rates. If a doctor sees a risk of fatal liver dysfunction, they might hesitate to prescribe it unless the patient is completely out of all other options.
Yeah, the risk-reward flips.
And regulators might also demand more stringent long-term trials, or they might limit the eligible patient pool entirely, which directly compresses the revenue potential.
So who are the specific losers in that rare disease category? Like, if traders are recalibrating their risk models right now and deciding the addressable markets are shrinking, which names are taking the hit?
Well, traders will apply a higher risk discount to companies operating under similar models. So Ultragenyx Pharmaceutical, ticker RARE,
Okay.
Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, ticker ALNY, and Sarepta Therapeutics, ticker SRPT.
Yeah.
These are all companies that may see pressure.
Even though their drugs are different.
Right, because they develop high-value treatments for very small, targeted populations. Let us talk about why their stock prices might fall, though. It is all about valuation multiples.
Can you break that down?
Sure. When a sector is viewed as safe and predictable, investors are willing to pay a high multiple for future earnings.
Yeah.
But when the market decides that the rare disease model carries more regulatory or safety risk than previously thought, the valuation multiples for these specific companies compress.
Oh, I get it.
So even if their specific drugs are fine, the overarching anxiety makes the stock less valuable today.
And it does not just stop at rare diseases.
Right.
We also have to look at the broader biotech sector,
Definitely.
specifically the companies that are highly sensitive to regulatory news. The approval pathways for these drugs are notoriously rigorous.
And that brings us to our next group of losers. Biotech stocks that sit in areas where investor confidence relies heavily on safety and regulatory decisions.
Who fits that profile?
Companies like Biogen, ticker BIIB, Moderna, ticker mRNA, and Illumina, ticker ILMN.
Again, completely different drugs.
Again, they are not direct Tavneos plays. But their stock prices often move based on how accommodating or strict the regulatory environment appears to be.
Right.
Think about it from the perspective of a regulatory agency. When regulators and doctors in a major market like Japan suddenly halt prescriptions for a drug due to safety, it often makes agencies like the FDA in the United States or the EMA in Europe more cautious.
They get spooked.
Exactly. They might slow down their own approval processes or demand more post-market safety data for other entirely unrelated drugs.
And time is money.
Yes. When that happens, traders often reduce their exposure to regulatory-sensitive biotech names overall because delays cost money.
Okay, so we have covered the losers. We've got Amgen directly, the companies reliant on acquisitions, the rare disease sector, and the regulatory-sensitive biotech names.
The long list.
It is. But capital-leaving risky biotech stocks does not just vanish into thin air.
No, it has to go somewhere.
Right. It looks for a place to go. It looks for safety. So let us talk about the concept of a safe haven in the pharmaceutical world.
A safe haven in the pharmaceutical sector almost always comes down to revenue diversity. When safety concerns hit one specialty drug, money rotates toward larger pharma companies with broader revenue bases. These are companies that do not depend on a single rare disease product or even a single therapeutic area for their survival.
Hold on. I need to challenge this premise.
Go for it.
You're about to name companies that are considered safe havens purely because of their size. But if we look at Johnson & Johnson, for example, they have faced extensive multi-billion-dollar lawsuits over product safety in the past.
That's true.
So are they really a safe haven just because they're big? Or is the market simply ignoring their own historical risks because they just want a place to park cash today?
That is a very fair critique. And, you are right to point out that large pharma is not immune to safety failures or litigation.
Right.
However, in the context of capital rotation during a rare disease panic, safe means structural financial resilience.
Okay, structural resilience. I like that.
The specific winners here are the diversified large pharma companies. So Johnson & Johnson, ticker J&J Merck, ticker MRK, and Pfizer, ticker PFE. When traders rotate capital into these names, they are not betting that these companies will never face a safety issue.
They're just betting it won't kill the company.
Exactly. They are betting that a single safety issue will not bankrupt them. These companies sell everything from oncology drugs to vaccines to basic over-the-counter medicines.
The diversity protects them.
Right. A safety issue with one drug in their massive portfolios is just a manageable line item on a balance sheet. Their sheer scale provides a safe haven when investors become cautious about the smaller, single-product biotech names where, one failure means the company loses its entire valuation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The capital flows into J&J, MRK, and PFE because traders know the overall enterprise revenue is protected by geographic and therapeutic diversity.
Let us think about the practical medical reality of this headline for a second.
Sure.
If a drug is causing liver damage, doctors are not just going to guess whether their patients are okay.
Definitely not.
Right, they will need to monitor their patients' livers much more closely. That leads me to connect the dots and deduce that this situation creates a sudden, sustained demand for diagnostic testing.
That is precisely how the medical workflow adapts, and it points us directly to our next group of winners. The Tavneos issue puts an immediate spotlight on liver function testing, patient monitoring, and overall drug safety checks.
How does that actually look on the ground?
Let us walk through the mechanics of this. When doctors prescribe a drug with a known or suspected liver toxicity risk, they do not just write the prescription and send the patient home.
No, they can't.
Right. They establish a testing protocol. The patient must get blood drawn to check liver enzymes, specifically ALT and AST levels, before they even start the medication.
Okay.
And then they have to come back every few weeks or months for continuous monitoring.
It's an ongoing process.
Exactly. When doctors become more cautious across the entire specialty drug landscape, the volume of these mandatory tests increases structurally.
This means the companies that provide the actual infrastructure and the physical laboratories for that testing see a direct recurring benefit. I mean, every blood draw is a billable event.
Exactly. The specific winners in the testing and diagnostic space are Quest Diagnostics, ticker DGX, LabCorp, ticker LH, and Thermo Fisher Scientific, ticker TMO.
All the testing giants.
Right. Healthcare systems absolutely require their testing infrastructure to operate safely. Quest Diagnostics and LabCorp operate the physical testing centers and process the samples.
Yeah.
So when monitoring protocols become stricter, the sheer volume of tests processed by DGX and LH goes up, which directly drives their top-line revenue.
And what about Thermo Fisher?
Then you have Thermo Fisher Scientific, which provides the actual laboratory equipment, the machines, and the chemical reagents necessary to run these tests.
Well, they sell the supplies.
They do. They also see increased demand. They become winners because they provide the mandatory picks and shovels for these safety checks. Without them, the healthcare system cannot verify if a drug is damaging a patient's liver.
Now, capital's also going to look for places to stay within the specialty medicine space, right?
Yeah, some investors won't want to leave the space entirely.
If an investor specifically wants exposure to high-growth specialty medicine because of the attractive margins, but they are pulling money out of Amgen or the specific rare disease names we mentioned earlier, where do they park that money?
They will look for companies with stronger, more established franchises in specialty medicine.
Okay.
If a newer acquired drug like Tavneos faces restrictions, investors wanting that specialty exposure will rotate into names that have already proven their safety profiles over many years and have established market dominance.
They want the reward without the new drug risk.
Exactly. They want the high margins of specialty medicine, but they want the risk profile of a proven asset.
So explain to me why certain areas of specialty medicine insulate a company from this kind of risk. Who falls into that alternative specialty medicine category, and what exactly do they do differently?
Well, we can identify 3 clear winners here. And the reason they are insulated comes down to the specific science they focus on.
Let's hear them.
First, AbbVie, ticker ABBV, they are a winner for their massive immunology exposure.
Huh.
Immunology drugs treat conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis. These are vast markets, and AbbVie has drugs with safety profiles that have been studied extensively over millions of patient doses.
Very predictable. Who is next?
Second, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, ticker REGN. They benefit because of their depth in biologics. Biologics are large, complex molecules, often manufactured inside living cells, compared to traditional small molecule drugs.
Right.
Regeneron has a highly predictable pipeline in areas like vision loss and asthma. The safety hurdles are already cleared.
Third.
Third, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, ticker VRTX. They stand out for their established strength in the rare disease space, particularly in cystic fibrosis.
Wait, I thought we just said rare disease was risky right now.
We did. But while Vertex is a rare disease company, it operates differently than a company relying on a newly acquired asset.
Oh, I see.
Vertex basically owns the cystic fibrosis market, and their safety and efficacy data span many years.
So it's about the track record.
Exactly. Investors rotate into ABBV, REGN, and VRTX because they offer the lucrative specialty medicine growth profile without the immediate safety cloud hanging over them.
Well, this has been a really clear look at how capital moves through the sector based on one piece of information. To summarize the core trading angle here, the main question for traders is whether this remains a problem isolated specifically to Amgen and Tavneos,
Right.
or whether it becomes a wider warning sign that forces a revaluation of all rare disease companies and their financial models.
Yeah, and for anyone watching Amgen, ticker AMGN, you need to monitor a few specific variables in the coming months.
What should we look for?
Watch for their updated sales expectations in the next earnings calls. Pay attention to any direct comments from regulators in other countries outside of Japan.
That's a good point.
Assess the potential legal risk emerging from these patient reports. And watch to see if the financial logic of the ChemoCentryx deal faces further scrutiny from analysts.
And for the rest of the market?
More broadly across the market, expect to see pressure fall on high-multiple biotech stocks, while diversified pharma and diagnostic testing companies stand as the clearest possible winners as money rotates to safety and infrastructure.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Consider how a regional safety report, like the one we're seeing out of Japan today, can so quickly alter the risk profile and the valuation of an entire healthcare theme.
It's wild.
It really is. One report across the globe forces every trader to recalculate the value of multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, the reliability of rare disease pricing models, and the baseline demand for diagnostic testing. It is a stark reminder of how interconnected these financial markets truly are.
Absolutely.
This is not financial advice or buy or sell recommendations. This is purely the opinion of the author.